1960, a young Californian named Lauren Cunningham had a vision of waves of young people from all nations going and preaching the gospel to all nations.
Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature.
Since then, movements of young people passionate about the Great Commission have popped up all over the world. In the early 2000s, Brent and Heather Madsen, a young couple from New Zealand and United States, had a call to start one of those movements in the city of Mazatlan. Mazatlan, a city on the coast of Mexico, given the name the Pearl of the Pacific, known for shrimp, banda, and its tourism.
Well, in 2002, we got the word of the Lord to come to Mazatlan. And he spoke to us out of Zephaniah 2:6, the place by the sea will be a place of shepherds and sheep pens. And it was really cool because he was giving us a geographical location, which was, we knew, Mazatlan by the sea, but he was also telling us what we were going to do, that we were going to be a place of raising up leaders. And so with that, we began to assemble a team. And once that team was assembled in 2003, we went to language school.
So we moved to Guadalajara and went through language school as a team. And I think that season really showed me the importance of having confirmation from God, because we had a number of single girls that moved over, and within a month or two, they all left. So it was a really special time. It was a time as a team too, where it was just us as we got ready for that school. There was so much that you just had to face the hard stuff together, and there was so much grit that you had to have.
Something I think was funny about our time in Guadalajara is when we would have one-on-ones with Brent and Heather, it was a walk around the block of the house that we lived in. And you knew how serious the conversation was based on how many laps around the block that somebody would have to go.
In July 2004, YWAM Mazatlan was born. Within a few months, they found a 13-bedroom house to use as their first YWAM campus. And in September, they launched their first discipleship training school, also known as DTS, of 22 people.
We really did have nothing. We didn't have people on the team initially that could lead us in worship. So at the time, I think it was just Micah's Barbie boombox that we used to put CDs on. We had no beds, like the bunk beds. I just remember, I don't even know how we got the money. I just remember this massive courtyard with us all building bunk beds. I think that's what made that time so special, was we literally only had what we had in our hands that we could bring. So when you're trusting God for bunk beds, when you're trusting God for speakers and contacts, it just forces you to be super creative.
2005 was the year of pioneering new things. In that year, Homes of Hope, Remnant, Verano de Fuego, and the first Carnival outreach began, where they saw over 80 salvations. There were many challenges in the process, like getting permits to build the first Homes of Hope house or building skate ramps, but nevertheless, God was faithful.
Entonces, la familia no tenía una casa y fuimos a pedir un permiso y nos dijeron, venga la próxima semana. No nos entregaron el permiso, faltaba una semana para que llegara el equipo a construir la casa. Y fui y me entregaron el folder y el folder decía, denegado. Entonces dije, ¿qué hicimos? ¿Qué vamos a hacer? Y de repente Dios nos dice, vayan y hablen con el presidente municipal. Fuimos corriendo a la oficina y dice, no está aquí, está en una colonia. Y fuimos corriendo a la colonia. Nos dieron 2 minutos con él. Y entonces él viene y dice, me gusta cómo piensan ustedes. Quiero más gente como ustedes. ¿Dónde firmo? Y nos firmó por todo el programa, no solamente por una casa.
By 2008, God was already opening more doors and multiplying what was happening in Mazatlan. The Lord began to speak more and more about multiplication. This led to the campus going all together in a bus down to the chaotic and busy Mexico City. During this trip, God spoke to a young staff named Chris Edwards about leading the base plan. Around the same time, a deposit was paid for what is now known as the Zephia Property.
So the fight for buying this first property was a real fight. There was a lot of assumption that we had these people who wanted to donate and it was going to be enough to cover the whole thing. I think they were doing a matching gift of $300,000. And really we came to this point that I think a lot of our hearts were trusting in these people versus what God wanted to do. There was a really powerful time as the crash of economic things happened in 2008 and they were not able to follow through with the donation that they wanted to give. There was a lot of repentance that happened. There's something in the Bible called the Feast of Booths, and they would make little tents and camp in them. They felt that we were going to have a time of, we're going to have a camping outside. We're gonna give up this whole hopes that maybe this building was even for us, because if it's not from God, then we don't want to take it. So I remember we all set up sleeping bags and cots all out on the patio. We all listened to each other snoring, and it just made some really neat memories of saying we are willing to act on what God says, and what He says is more important than the ideas that we had.
Around 2010, drug cartel activity had increased and violence was at an all-time high, making it more unsafe than ever. As a result of this, the lack of students, teams, and tourism in the city became really hard to deal with.
There was definitely a sense of fear. It was really interesting because it was not only fear like for the teams on the outside, but then we had to face it as staff, as leaders, and what are we really here for, like the right reasons.
Yet despite the surge of cartel activity, YWAM Mazatlan began running 3 DTSs a year in 2011. In 2012, Zephia Property was miraculously paid off.
I remember when the building got paid, there was definitely celebration around it, and so much of this sense of, wow, like, whew, the battle is done and we can like finally rest. And I remember Brent bringing forward an idea for the next property. And I remember thinking, Brent, seriously, like, just let us enjoy this. But something that Brent has always done has been to challenge us, what is the next giant? So David didn't just kill Goliath, he went after the next giant and the next giant.
Chris Edwards pioneered what was called YCMC, or Central Mexico City, that year.
We finally led a DTS in September of 2011 with a focus on planting a base in Mexico City. And we left for outreach December 24th. And we arrived and got established. I felt like the Lord said, don't look at the whole city. Look at from what you can see from this vantage point, one block at a time. I think we're 12 years on since YWAM got established in Mexico City. It was a journey of listening to God, obeying, repenting at times, a lot of times where we just had to persevere.
Despite the economic crashes and drug violence, God had plans to bring His kingdom to Mexico. In 2013, Dorney Kaika Hobbs led an outreach to the Philippines.
So for us, the ship story really started back in 2010. We were at a YWAM celebration, celebrating 50 years at that time of YWAM. And we were, like good YWAMers, praying over a big map with all the people that were there gathered at the conference. And it was in that time when God first spoke to us about the vision of the ships, and that this was something that He wanted us as a family to step into. And then that vision really was solidified in 2013. We were at that time leading a DTS, and we had taken the whole DTS to the Philippines.
So on this outreach in the Philippines, we went through 2 natural disasters, earthquake and a typhoon. And being on an island and not having access to other islands via boat, it really helped us to understand the need to have ships in the mission. And so we went through that whole experience, did relief work, but there were so many limitations.
Soon after, a family connected with the Hobbs about a ship that they had.
What they said to us was, we have a ship, but we don't have people, we don't have the logistics to do ministry. And I said, we don't have a ship, but we have people. From the time the Amazing Grace showed up to the marina here in Mazatlan to the point where we are today, it took about 7 years.
Around that time, God spoke a lot about expansion.
So in 2014, our first property we had acquired, and we'd done really well to see most of it paid off. And then God was beginning to speak about 5,000 students a year. We were lucky at that time if we were doing 50 a year. So it was a huge stretch. It was a test of faith. And we said yes, and with the yes, he gave us the faith to move towards that goal. That's what we're believing is for 5,000 students a year from this corner of the world out into the nations.
2017 was a big year because this was the year YWAM Mazatlan received the Amazing Grace.
One of the hardest things for us as leaders to experience during this time was to recruit people to the team, to see them come, do their entire commitment at YWAM Mazatlan and never see the ship actually go into the water.
2020 came with COVID pandemic that rocked the whole world, and YWAM Mazatlan was no exception. For 3 months, the base shut down, and week after week, more and more staff were announcing that their commitment was coming to an end. Yet in faith, base leadership purchased 2 more properties to expand the campus. YWAM Durango became an extension of YWAM Mazatlan, and also a brave staff named Omega started a new ministry called Racham.
Cuando yo llegué a la base, conocí un lugar cerca que es el Cerro del Ocho. Después de ahí, Dios me habló mucho como de rescatar a los niños de esta comunidad que estaban sufriendo mucho abuso y pues ser una voz para los niños que no tienen voz. Y de ahí yo empecé a trabajar este proyecto que se llama Racham. Racham viene del hebreo que es misericordia y compasión. Este proyecto para poder darles educación en línea, poder darles comida, poder llevarles también la palabra de Dios. Nuestra finalidad como ministerio pues es poder hacer un centro comunitario donde también se pueda ayudar a los niños y también integralmente como viene siendo en las familias, ¿no? Uno de los impactos que pudimos ver a través del trabajo de estos años, 9 años que hemos estado en esta comunidad que es el Cerro, ha sido poder rescatar a más de 30 niños en situaciones de riesgo, y una de las chicas de las cuales pues ya muchos conocen es Carolina. De hecho, este año ella también salió a las naciones, pero ver el corazón de Dios hacia ella, ver ahorita cómo ella terminó su proceso de su EDE, cómo está estudiando ahorita en la universidad. Ella me decía, Omega, yo quiero hacer esta escuela de leyes porque quiero ayudar a más niños.
In 2023, God began to stir up something big within YWAM globally, a new movement called OMT.
OMT is a movement that stands for Oral Lardo, and it basically focuses on translating the Bible in every indigenous language in Mexico.
Muchos saben que yo pertenezco a una comunidad indígena y me dijeron que sería bueno que yo pudiera participar, y ahora estoy como muy involucrado porque muchas comunidades han sido alcanzadas por parte de mi testimonio. Tenía como posibilidades también de decirle a mi comunidad que ellos pueden encontrar a Dios y que Dios puede hablarle en su lengua materna.
So the impact that OMT has here, we really got to see this in July, because we got translators from different people groups here on the base, and they started a process of translating the Bible into their mother tongues.
Una de mis experiencias con OMT es el poder darme cuenta que OMT es un movimiento que también entrena a comunidades indígenas o a personas indígenas para hacer misiones. Y uno de los frutos que yo he visto es que 2 personas que están traduciendo en OMT van a ser entrenadas también para ir como misioneras, para ir a las naciones a compartir lo que Dios ha hecho con ellas.
2024 marks 20 years of YWAM Mazatlan. This year, 3 indigenous Mexican groups came to orally translate the Bible into their native tongue for the first time. After 7 long and extensive years, the Amazing Grace has finally been able to set sail and bring medical and spiritual care to the isolated, and 2 DTSs have gotten to take the ship and do their outreach.
It really has been a journey of just standing upon the word of the Lord and not giving up and being obedient to do what he says.
I remember when we first got here 20 years ago, and the people's perception, the church's perception is, hey, another missionary, someone from outside. Everyone kept saying, it's Mexico's time. We really engaged with it's Mexico's time, and we began to believe that God could send Latins, missionaries from this corner of the world to nations and use them, but also young people. Young people, what's on God's heart when he created YWAM is he wants to use young people and people who just simply trust him. So we have embraced that. We believe that we're rebranding missions here at YWAM Mazatlan to see a greater gospel impact throughout the world. It's going to be amazing.
It's really cool to see the foundation that's been laid in the last 20 years, and it's exciting to see that the next generation to come has something to look forward to, and to think about all the people and the lives that have gone through the space, and how people have seen the promises come to pass, and even staff that were once here are now seeing the promises fulfilled, but even more the people who will come and plant seeds and see the next generations and the one after that. Yeah, just get to see God do something so cool, and it's just amazing his faithfulness and just so much gratitude, and it's so true when we listen and we obey and we never give up. He's so faithful. So it's really awesome.